Welcome to CivilNet's weekly program, Turkey Over the Mountain, where we look at the news and events shaping the week in Turkey. I'm Maria Titizian, and here are the top stories. This past week, Russian President Vladimir Putin conducted a one-day trip to meet with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara. The two leaders, who are known for their outspoken demagoguery and their inclination to embrace memories of their lost empire, centered their talks on the issue of energy. Turkey is Russia's second largest importer of natural gas after Germany. Turkey's importance as a customer for Russian gas has grown due to political tensions with the EU and the United States over Moscow's operations in Ukraine, which led to sanctions against Russia. There is little doubt that the dramatic fall of the Russian ruble because of a drop in oil prices has added to Russia's problems. Putin and Erdogan signed a protocol on energy cooperation, and it is expected that bilateral trade will increase to 100 billion annually by 2020. Putin said that Moscow would be abandoning plans for a gas pipeline to Europe via Bulgaria and will instead look to develop a gas hub to southern Europe through Turkey. While they may agree to cooperate in the field of energy, the two leaders, however, have serious divergences in their foreign policy positions. Putin has been one of the most ardent defenders of embattled Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, while Erdogan has been one of his most severe critics. In the case of Egypt, Putin backed its new president Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, while Erdogan labeled him a tyrant. And when Russia annexed Crimea earlier in this year, Erdogan spoke on behalf of the Turkic people, the Crimean Tatars. Pope Francis concluded a three-day pastoral visit to Turkey. The trip had a strong emphasis on ecumenical relations and interfaith dialogue. The Pope and the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew I, who is the spiritual head of the 300 million member Orthodox Church, signed a joint declaration pledging to intensify their efforts to secure Christian unity and calling for constructive dialogue with Islam. There were many moving moments during the Pope's visit, but one particularly striking moment was when the Pope asked for the blessing of the Orthodox Patriarch during Divine Liturgy at the Patriarchal Church of St. George in Istanbul. The image of the Pope bowing his head to receive the blessing was shared around the world. The Pope and the Patriarch are pushing hard to create stronger ties between the Eastern churches and Rome, which split nearly 1,000 years ago, in the belief that they can press their common concerns more effectively when united, particularly on the defense of Christian minorities. The Pope's visit to Turkey thereby cast a spotlight on the flight of religious minorities from Iraq and Syria, where Christians and others face persecution by Sunni Muslim extremists. During his visit, Pope Francis also met with refugees who had fled violence in the Middle East. Turkey has taken in more than 1.5 million refugees. He met with 100 Christian children and teens who had fled Iraq and told them, quote, "The degrading conditions in which so many refugees are forced to live are intolerable." The Pope's decision to visit Turkey when he did was significant, given the sectarian strife along its borders with Iraq and Syria, which have seen a dangerous rise in extremism. The Pope said that violence by Islamist extremists is, quote, "a profoundly grave sin against God." A century ago, Christians accounted for as much as 20% of the population of Turkey. Today, they make up less than 1%. The Armenian genocide during Ottoman rule and the Armenian experience after the establishment of the modern Turkish Republic also reflects the fate of other Christian minorities. The Armenian Patriarchate was established in 1461, almost 8 years after the Ottoman Turks took control of Constantinople, or modern-day Istanbul. During his return flight to Rome, Pope Francis, at a press conference on the plane, voiced hope that the Turkey-Armenia border would open. He also expressed hope that with the centennial of the Armenian genocide approaching in 2015, gestures would bring the two nations closer together. He also specifically said that he hoped Turkey would open its border with Armenia after it closed it in 1993 in solidarity with Azerbaijan, who was embroiled in a war with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh. And now to talk to us about these two important events that took place in Turkey this week is Andrew Finkel of P24, independent platform for journalism. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Let's talk about the Putin-Erdogan meeting that took place and about this new protocol that they signed on energy. What has been the reaction in Turkey?
Well, I think that they obviously see this as a great opportunity, but I think there's a certain amount of skepticism. I mean, pipelines are very big, costly enterprises. Until you actually build one and see the gas or oil running, no one really quite believes that they can happen. I mean, basically what the situation is that Russia has canceled one pipeline in favor of another. So the question is, why didn't they build the first pipeline, and why are they building the second? The first pipeline was meant to go through Bulgaria. The first pipeline, was meant to go through Bulgaria. The second will now go through Turkey and link up to existing pipelines. So this is obviously good news for Turkey, which will get cheaper energy and will get transit fees. So, in theory, everyone's pretty happy about this. But of course, they're waiting to see if the deal can be financed and actually implemented.
Sure, but there is a lot of skepticism taking into account the personalities of both leaders. Especially that there's such a divergent foreign policy position on behalf of both, on their positions in Syria, in Egypt. Do you think that this will come to fruition at some point?
Well, whether it comes to fruition or not will probably not depend on the very serious foreign policy divergences which you outlined. I think the one thing about both leaders is that they are eminently practical, and that dollars and cents comes first. So Turkey and Russia have very divergent policies on Syria. Turkey wants to see Assad fall. Russia doesn't, but they're prepared to overlook this not so minor difference in the interests of both countries' economic advantages.
Interesting. And we are a few days late, but again, I'd like to talk about Pope Francis's visit. It got a lot of media coverage around the world, certainly here in Armenia as well. And he was there with a specific mission to talk about the Christian minorities in the Middle East and the viability of their existence there. And, for us Armenians, it was also important that we heard that on his way back to Rome, during a press conference he had on the plane, he did mention that he wants to see the Armenia-Turkey border opened. But they were also saying that the crowds weren't as big as expected. What was, again, the reaction of the ordinary citizen there?
Well, I think people were flattered by the visit. This Pope is, he's a reasonably popular Pope. I mean, I think everyone latched onto the fact that he didn't. In the end, I think he traveled in an official Mercedes, but he really wanted his, Ford Escort Cortina, the modest car that he travels around Rome in. I think a lot of the opposition press played this up to the fact that, Erdogan is much more imperial in his ambitions and his lifestyle than the Pope. So it wasn't an unpopular visit. It was this is not a Catholic country, so you wouldn't expect hundreds of thousands of people out there to see and to hear the spiritual father. But in that sense, I think it's a successful visit. He met with Bartholomew, the ecumenical patriarch, who's is part of a millennial-long dialogue between the Orthodox Church and Catholicism. It's the wheels of ecumenical progress are move very slowly, but the reconciliation of the two churches happening apace. And of course, as you say, the Pope did mention his hope for an opening of the Armenian border. I think he's clearly taking a sort of softly approach to Turkish-Armenian relations. He's got his eye on not the long range of genocide recognition, but the immediate objective of restoring some sort of normalcy between Armenia and Turkey by getting that closed frontier open.
Okay. Well, Andrew Finkel, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be following the energy agreements and what's taking place in Turkey in the coming weeks. So thanks very much.
My pleasure. Bye.
And that is our Turkey Over the Mountain for this week. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. Stay with CivilNet.